My daughter's missing. I guess she never made it to school this morning.
How old's your daughter?
She's 10.
Okay, what's your daughter's name?
Jessica Ridgeway.
It's my rock. She's all of our rock.
A mother.
The bright voice of my little girl. She needs to come home.
And a father.
I try to stay positive about it, but yeah, it's hard. I just want to find my daughter.
I watch her walk out the door, and I shut the door, and that's the last time I saw her, and I want to come walking back through that door. That is not ever anything I want. Ever any parents.
Response team unit. They were inside this home much of the afternoon for about 2 hours. They've since left, but they first arrived not even 10 minutes after the Ridgeway family left the home. This FBI evidence response team on standby, soon putting on gloves, covering their shoes, then walking in the front door, inside, outside, looking for any sign of Jessica.
Late Wednesday night, police announced a body had been found near a park in the Denver suburb of Arvada. At this point, they won't officially confirm it is 10-year-old Jessica Ridgeway, but multiple police sources tell ABC News they believe it is the girl's body.
6 miles from Jessica's home, maintenance workers found a heavy bag on the side of the road.
So you were out, for a better word, hunting?
Yeah, that's the only word I can think of.
Westminster, Colorado. Tucked right between Denver and Boulder, it's the kind of suburb that makes you exhale the moment you pull off the highway. Stanley Lake catches fire at golden hour. Families walk the promenade on weeknights. Kids ride bikes without a care in the world because nobody's really worried. It's the kind of American town where you leave your garage door open by accident and nothing happens. Quiet. Familiar. The exact kind of place where you never think something like this could happen. Until the morning it does. On Friday, October 5th, 2012, a 10-year-old girl ate a granola bar for breakfast, kissed her mom goodbye, zipped up her coat, and walked out the front door. She was heading to school. A walk she had made dozens of times before. A walk that should have taken less than 10 minutes. She never arrived. Her name was Jessica Ridgeway. And over the next 19 days, the quiet suburb of Westminster, Colorado would be shaken to its core. Not by a stranger passing through town, not by someone from the city, but by someone who lived just blocks away. Someone who had attempted something like this before, and failed. Someone who had been hiding in plain sight the entire time, and who more than one person had quietly noticed without ever quite knowing what to do about it. What investigators uncovered when they finally broke this case open is the kind of true crime story that stays lodged in the back of your mind long after you've heard it, the kind you turn over quietly for days. Because this was not some distant tragedy. This was a Tuesday morning in Middle America. This was a granola bar and a coat, and a little girl who just wanted to get to school on time. And the person responsible was someone her community passed on the sidewalk every single day. This is a true crime documentary, and this is Jessica's story. Before we get into it, drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. We've got people tuning in from all across the country, from Texas to Oregon, New York to right here in Colorado, and we read every single one. And if you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button right now. We cover true crime cases like this every single week, and you do not want to miss what's coming next. To understand the full weight of what happened in Westminster that October, you first have to know who Jessica Ridgeway actually was. Not just a name on a missing persons alert, not just a face on a flyer stapled to a telephone pole. A real kid, a full, living, breathing human being with a personality so big it apparently could not be contained in one room. Jessica was born to Sarah and Jeremiah Ridgeway, two parents who, though they had gone their separate ways some years earlier, never stopped making their daughter the priority. Jeremiah had since relocated to Missouri, and like a lot of families navigating distance and shared custody, things were not always perfectly simple. But by every account from people who knew them, Jessica had a genuine relationship with both of her parents. She was deeply loved. She lived in Westminster with her mom, her grandmother, and her aunt, and if you had asked anyone in that household to describe her in a single word, they probably would have landed on the same one. Joy. Her teachers called her radiant. Always smiling, always the first hand in the air, always ready to walk up to someone brand new and start a conversation like she had known them her whole life. She was the kind of kid who did not just show up to school and go through the motions. She genuinely wanted to be there, and the people around her felt that every single day. Outside the classroom, Jessica was all energy. She choreographed her own little dance routines in the living room. She made up songs out of nowhere. She was obsessed with animals, devoted to her favorite shows, and once she decided she wanted to figure something out, she did not stop until she had it. Determination at 10 years old. Real, stubborn, wonderful determination. Her grandmother would later recall the morning of October 5th with the kind of detail that only grief keeps perfectly sharp. Jessica had woken up at exactly 7:45. She had recently asked her mom to buy her an alarm clock because she wanted to start waking herself up on her own, more independent. That was so completely Jessica. She watched a little television, ate her granola bar, changed into her clothes for the day. Then she and her mom sat together at the kitchen table and peeled an orange for her to take to school. She bundled up in her coat, said her goodbyes, and walked out the front door into the cool Colorado morning. The plan was simple. Walk to Chelsea Park, about 5 minutes from home, meet up with her friends at their usual spot, and head to Witt Elementary together. She had done it countless times. It was routine. It was ordinary. It was exactly the kind of morning that should end with a kid coming home in the afternoon with a backpack full of homework and a story about something funny that happened at recess. But Jessica never showed up at the park. Her friends waited as long as they could, then kept walking so they would not be late for class. Nobody panicked right away because nobody had a reason to. Except that with Jessica, this kind of thing simply did not happen. She was never late. She had never missed a day without reason. She was the kind of kid you could set a clock by. So when 10 o'clock came and went with no sign of her, her teachers picked up the phone and called Sarah. Sarah had worked the overnight shift, 10 at night, straight through to 7 in the morning. After walking Jessica out the door, she had gone directly to bed. She did not hear the call. The school left a voicemail that sat unheard on her phone until 4:30 that afternoon. When Sarah finally listened to it, her first instinct was that there had to be some kind of mistake. She drove past Chelsea Park. She stopped by the school. She knocked on doors at her daughter's friends' houses. Nobody had seen her. Nobody knew anything. And that was when she picked up the phone and called the Westminster Police Department.
My daughter's missing. I guess she never made it to school this morning.
How old's your daughter?
She's 10.
Okay, what's your daughter's name?
Jessica Ridgeway.
There is a moment every parent dreads without ever letting themselves fully picture it. That cold, sinking feeling when you stop telling yourself your child just wandered off and started understanding that something is genuinely wrong. By 9:15 that same evening, investigators had seen enough to reach that same conclusion. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation issued an Amber Alert for Jessica Ridgeway.
I want to show you this little girl's picture, Jessica Ridgeway. She never made it to school, and right away, the school called the little girl's mother. The mom works nights, so she didn't get the message until much later in the day, and that's what's bringing us to where we are right now. A massive search taking place. Right now, police, along with the CBI, have issued an Amber Alert, and the reason is this. It's because of the amount of time that has passed since she was last seen.
At least 50 police officers, including the FBI, are searching right now.
When we start with an 8-hour delay or a delay as substantial as this, the distance that she could have wandered, even on her own, just gets huge.
Police say Jessica's father, who lives out of state, is in a custody battle with Jessica's mother. They do not believe Jessica is with him, but are not ruling anyone out.
We don't have a person of interest, and we're going to look at every angle.
Nothing like this has really ever happened. Like, it's always surprising when something happens here.
So as you can hear from that interview, this is a very serious situation. Normally, Jessica meets some friends at a park, which is just about 3 blocks from her home. Then the entire group walks to Witt Elementary. The girls that she usually walks with have been interviewed. They did not see her today, but at such a young age, as of 10 years old, they just did not think much of it. Again, we do want to show the picture of Jessica Ridgeway, 10 years old, 4'10" in height with shoulder blonde hair. She has blue eyes. She is wearing a winter jacket, I'm told, a black puffy jacket, but with weather like this, it's still of concern. Again, search is taking place across Westminster. In fact, if you are concerned, you would like to help, you can come here to the Westview Recreation Center. We're at the intersection of 108th and Oak, again, in Westminster.
But by then, the sun was already gone and the temperature had dropped hard across the Front Range. A very long night had already begun. Within hours of that Amber Alert going out, Westminster looked like a city that had decided, collectively and without hesitation, that it was not going to sit still. Firefighters hauled out thermal imaging equipment and flooded Chelsea Park with powerful lights that turned the night almost white. Police wanted to put a helicopter in the air with night vision capability, but the temperature had dropped so sharply there was a real risk of ice forming on the rotor blades. Too dangerous to fly. So they worked the ground, every inch of it, and they did not work it alone.
We're using every resource we have. We're trying to use air or helicopters that have equipment that can search in the dark. Unfortunately, the weather has grounded those, so we're not able to use that tool. We've brought our fire department in who has equipment that sees in the dark, thermal imaging equipment, so they're out searching with that. Over 400 faculty and every parent that has a student attending Witt Elementary has received the notification that Jessica is missing.
When the sun comes up, police say they will be bringing in even more people to help search for Jessica. They're also hoping for a break in the weather so they can get helicopters up to search from the sky.
Volunteers showed up in numbers nobody had anticipated. Ordinary people, neighbors, strangers, parents who had never met Jessica but showed up anyway because the alternative was going home and doing nothing. Officers and civilians moved together through backyards, open fields, creek beds, and wooded stretches, anywhere a child could be hidden or lost. Every vehicle entering or leaving the neighborhood was photographed. Officers stood at crosswalks around the clock. Mailboxes and trees all across Westminster were wrapped in purple ribbons, Jessica's favorite color. The community was not just watching from a distance, it was moving. Around 2 a.m, authorities asked the volunteers to go home, get some rest, and return at sunrise. By that point, the Westminster Police Department had already established a formal command center and called in serious reinforcements. The FBI stepped in. 12 other agencies joined the effort. In the end, more than 1,000 people would work this case, grinding through over 4,000 tips across those first critical days. Back at Witt Elementary, investigators had already found something that gave them pause. Inside Jessica's desk was her notebook. Homework completed, everything neatly in order. And on one of the pages, in her own handwriting, she had written something that stopped the room cold. She had written, "Do not play in the park alone and be careful of strangers." She knew. She was careful. She was paying attention. Which told investigators something important right away. The idea that Jessica would have willingly walked up to someone she did not recognize simply did not hold up. That left 2 possibilities. Either she had been approached by someone she trusted, or she had been taken so quickly she never had a chance to react at all. 4 days after she disappeared, Jessica's family stepped outside for the first time to speak to the press. Until that moment, they simply could not bring themselves to face the cameras. But they had been cooperating with investigators from the very beginning, providing whatever was asked of them without hesitation.
And Mike, the FBI Mobile Evidence Response Team unit, they were inside this home much of the afternoon for about 2 hours. They've since left, but they first arrived not even 10 minutes after the Ridgeway family left the home. This FBI Evidence Response Team on standby, soon putting on gloves, covering their shoes, then walking in the front door, inside, outside, looking for any sign of Jessica.
And this is the first time we are hearing from Jessica's mother and father. Both deny any involvement in her disappearance. Both are holding out hope.
She's my rock. She's all of our rock.
A mother.
The bright voice of my little girl. She needs to come home.
And a father.
I try to stay positive about it, but yeah, it's hard. I just want to find my daughter.
I watch her walk out the door, and I shut the door, and that's the last time I saw her, and I want to come walking back through that door.
After searches by ground and by air, still no sign of the 10-year-old. And the reality of all of this is now very real.
It is not ever anything I want, any.
Police cleared both parents early in the process. The working theory had already solidified among investigators. This was the work of a stranger, or at least someone who was a stranger to Jessica. Then came the first discovery. A man living roughly 6.5 miles from the Ridgeway home came across something unusual while going about his day. A backpack. Inside it, a pair of glasses, a water bottle, and a piece of clothing. He had not been following the search closely enough to connect it immediately to the case unfolding miles away, so he posted about it online. Someone else made the connection and called 911. When Sarah heard about the backpack, she felt something she had not allowed herself to feel in days. A flicker of hope. Fragile and desperate, but real. Maybe Jessica was still out there? Maybe she was alive and trying to find her way back.
Over the weekend, a glimpse of optimism for the family when Jessica's backpack and water bottle were found in another subdivision 6 miles away.
I felt a sliver of hope. I figured, if something really bad happened to her, they wouldn't have got rid of the backpack just sitting there.
That hope lasted less than 24 hours. The following day, maintenance workers came across a heavy bag sitting along the side of a road roughly 6 miles from Jessica's home. They did not open it. They called authorities immediately. Inside, investigators made a discovery that no one on that case was prepared for.
Late Wednesday night, police announced a body had been found near a park in the Denver suburb of Arvada. At this point, they won't officially confirm it as 10-year-old Jessica Ridgeway, but multiple police sources tell ABC News they believe it is the girl's body.
Forensic testing confirmed that the remains belonged to Jessica Ridgeway. A wooden cross was also recovered at the scene. Details surrounding it were kept close, but investigators described it as a critical piece of physical evidence. A full picture of exactly what had happened was not yet possible, but what was clear was that this investigation had just shifted into something far more serious and far more urgent. Westminster Police Chief Lee Burke addressed the public with the words that landed like a weight across the entire city. "Our focus has shifted," he said, "from searching for Jessica to seeking justice for Jessica. We understand that there is a perpetrator at large in our community.
We pray for the Ridgeway family that you would comfort them.
Prayer, candlelight, and song Saturday night to remember a life taken far too soon.
It amazes me that people can be that sick in this world.
Hundreds took part in the vigil for Jessica Ridgeway in Westminster, Heather Fong and her family among them after her son said he wanted to light a candle for Jessica.
I feel like it kind of takes their childhood away because you teach them the world is a really good place, but then you have to train them now that you can't talk to strangers.
As the community mourns the loss of Jessica, police are stepping up efforts to find her killer. Saturday, investigators continue trying to develop leads. They've been going over sex offender lists and have even been reviewing data from cell phone towers around key locations in the case, hoping if a number registered at all of them, it could help lead to a suspect.
I don't know if he can make sense of it. We just need justice for Jessica, though. And so all the kids are safe.
The search was over. The hunt for answers had just begun. As investigators dug deeper into the days following that discovery, something surfaced that reframed the entire case in a single moment. 4 months earlier, on Memorial Day weekend, a woman out jogging near Kettner Lake had been attacked from behind without any warning. A man came out of nowhere and pressed a treated cloth over her face. She was dragged toward a nearby wooded area, but she fought back with everything she had, broke free, and ran. The description she was able to give investigators was limited but specific. A white male, somewhere between 5'6" and 5'8", average build. That was about as much as she could offer at the time. The incident had been documented and investigated, but ultimately treated as an isolated event. Frightening, yes. Alarming, absolutely. But isolated. It turned out it was anything but. The attack had occurred just steps away from the area where Jessica was believed to have been taken, and when DNA recovered from that earlier scene was cross-referenced with physical evidence from Jessica's case, the result came back as an exact match. Same individual, 2 separate incidents, 4 months apart. The FBI's lead spokesperson addressed the public directly and plainly. Everyone needed to remain in a state of maximum alertness. A detailed psychological profile of the suspect was assembled and released. The circle was tightening, but the person at the center of it was still out there, still moving freely through the same neighborhoods where families were trying to hold themselves together.
In Jessica Ridgeway's community of Westminster, Colorado this morning, there is sadness, anger, and fear.
This is horrible. This is absolutely horrible.
That a killer is on the loose.
I want to stress that we recognize that there is a predator at large in our community.
With state, local, and federal agents working Jessica's murder, police have scoured her neighborhood and the community for clues. More than 1,500 tips have poured in, 500 homes searched, a manhunt underway for a killer still on the street. Former FBI profiler Clint Van Zandt.
This is a whole nother type of predator. Number one, to commit a horrible act to kidnap a child, but number two, to dispose of a body this way puts this guy in a breed almost by himself.
We haven't identified an individual, so we're talking and conveying to our community the importance of looking at behavioral changes. Unfortunately, it's somebody's family member, a neighbor, a friend.
Dozens of worried residents came to Tom Ulbrich Saturday for crisis counseling.
Our behavioral analysis unit wants to convey a message to the community and to the public as a whole. They're looking for abnormal behavior, changes in someone's behavior from Jessica's disappearance last Friday until today. It could be something as simple as shaving of their face, could be changing of hair color, cutting of their hair, changing their mood, their personality, parking a vehicle in their garage, and they've always parked it in their driveway. So we suspect that someone in the community knows this individual, and we're asking for the community support once again. The community has been very supportive in the efforts so far to this investigation, and we're asking that they would do this one more time to help us gather new leads and new information.
More than 3,000 people gathered at a memorial service in Arvada to honor Jessica's life. Her favorite songs filled the space. A video of her played on a large screen at the front of the room, smiling, laughing, completely herself. The crowd was a sea of purple. Officers who had worked around the clock on the case stood alongside volunteers who had never met her, alongside strangers who had followed her story from hundreds of miles away and had felt the weight of her absence all the same. Grief has a way of building a community out of people who have absolutely nothing else in common. That night in Arvada, it did exactly that. Then came the break investigators had been waiting for.
Those of us involved in this case, unfortunately, never had the privilege of knowing your wonderful daughter. But I can honestly tell you, we feel like we did. We feel like she's part of our family, and we feel like we've lost part of our family.
After detectives made the decision to release images of the wooden cross recovered at the scene, a neighbor came forward almost immediately. She lived near a family by the name of Sig, and recognized that cross the moment she saw it. She contacted the FBI and told them about Austin Sig, a 17-year-old who lived nearby with his mother, Mindy. He owned a cross that looked nearly identical to the one in the photographs, but the cross was not the only thing she brought to their attention. She also told investigators that Austin had a deeply troubling preoccupation with death, and a fascination with the process of how living things decompose over time. It was the kind of detail that is easy to dismiss in isolation. In the context of everything else, it was impossible to ignore. Investigators brought Austin in for questioning. He was calm, composed in a way that struck people in the room but did not immediately raise the kind of alarm that leads to an arrest. He told investigators he had been home asleep the morning Jessica disappeared. He agreed without hesitation to provide a DNA sample. Agents noted that he was wearing a cross almost identical to the one in the photographs released to the public. His account seemed, on its surface, to hold together. They collected the swab, logged it into the system, and continued working door to door through the neighborhood. Standard procedure. Results were returned in sealed envelopes. An empty envelope meant the sample was not a match. Austin's envelope came back empty. He was taken off the radar entirely, and investigators moved on. But what nobody realized in that moment, what would not come to light until later, was that Austin's original DNA sample had never actually been tested. It had been lost somewhere in the process. An administrative failure, quiet and invisible, that had just cost the investigation the 19 days. The empty envelope was not a cleared result. It was a mistake that had slipped through without anyone catching it. Meanwhile, on October 22nd, news coverage began intensifying around the confirmed DNA connection between Jessica's case and the earlier attack on the jogger. That same afternoon, Austin told classmates he felt violently unwell, that something was wrong with him in a way he could not explain. That night, he slept in his mother's bedroom. And the following morning, he told Mindy he needed to tell her something. She looked at him and asked immediately, "Is this about Jessica?" She said later she did not know how she knew. She just did. When he confirmed it, Mindy collapsed to the floor, shaking, the same words cycling through her mind over and over. This cannot be happening. Then she made a decision that by any measure took everything she had. "You need to call the police," she told him. "Can you do it for me?" When he said he could not, Mindy picked up the phone herself and dialed 911. That call lasted nearly 18 minutes.
Hi, this is Molly at Westminster Police. Can I help you?
Hi, I need you to come to my house. My son wants to turn himself in for the Jessica Ridgeway murder.
Can you tell me exactly what he said?
But he did it, and he gave me details, and her remains are in my house.
Did you see them?
No.
Is he there with you?
Yes.
Is he cooperative?
Yes.
What is your son's name?
Austin Sig.
Okay, I understand that you're probably, feeling pretty crappy right now, but I want you to know that you did the right thing.
He did it. He just wanted me to call. He is turning himself in.
Okay, do you think that he's going to be cooperative with the officers?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you think that Austin would talk to me?
Will you talk to us? Yeah, hold on.
Okay.
Hello?
Is this Austin?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Austin. This is Molly at the Westminster Police Department.
Hi.
Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on right now, or how you're feeling, or how did this come about?
I don't exactly get why you're asking these questions. I murdered Jessica Ridgeway.
Okay.
I have proof that I did it. There is no other question. You just have to send a squad car, something down here, and I will answer all the questions that you want to ask, or anyone wants to ask of me as soon as you gotta get down here.
Okay. Have you committed any crimes like this before? Do you have a criminal history of any sort?
The only other thing that I have done that before this was the Kentner Lake incident where the woman got attacked. That was me.
Ma'am, I understand you want to call your husband, and I'm sorry, but I would like to keep you guys on the phone just until the officers get a little bit closer.
Well, how far are they?
They're going to be there in just a few minutes. Is Austin still there with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I won't let him out of my sight.
Okay. Has Austin been diagnosed with any mental health issues? Does he see a counselor or take any medications?
He saw a counselor years ago for porn.
Okay.
I can't breathe.
Take some deep breaths for me. Do you want me to start you an ambulance?
No.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Okay, what just happened?
I opened the window.
What's that?
I just opened the window.
Okay.
I need air.
Okay. Mindy, take a couple deep breaths for me, okay? You tell me when the officers get there. They're coming to your front door. Okay?
I don't see him. I don't see him yet.
You don't see them?
No.
Is Austin okay with you right now?
Yeah, he's just getting really anxious, and so am I.
Okay.
They're here. They're coming up.
They're coming up to the door?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you see the plainclothes officers and their badges?
Yeah, they're here.
Okay, I'll let you go speak with them, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Goodbye.
And 19 days after Jessica Ridgeway walked out her front door for the last time, Austin Sig walked into a police station. What came out during that interrogation is the kind of thing that stays with you, not because of the details alone, but because of the way he delivered them. Flat, composed, almost clinical. Like a person recounting something they had read about in a textbook, rather than something they had personally done. There was no trembling, no breaking down, no moment where the weight of it seemed to land on him the way it was landing on everyone else in that room. Austin confessed to the jogger attack first. He told investigators he had approached the woman from behind and pressed a chemically treated cloth over her face, intending to incapacitate her. When she broke free and escaped, he was not shaken by it in the way you might expect. He told police the failed attempt had made him stop and completely rethink his approach. He felt he needed a smaller, more vulnerable target, someone he could overpower without a struggle. When investigators asked him directly what he would have done had the jogger not gotten away, he answered without a pause. Probably the same thing he did to Jessica, he said. He then walked them through October 5th from the beginning.
You were out, for a better word, hunting?
Yeah, that's the only word I can think of.
And did you know Jessica?
No.
Had you ever seen her before?
Jessica had been at the park that morning, just being a kid. Austin had been watching. He parked his Jeep in a spot where it would not draw attention, then lowered himself into the back seat so she would not be able to see him as she walked past. When the moment came, he moved. Jessica screamed. There was no one nearby to hear her. He restrained her and drove her to his home. He told investigators, almost word for word, random place, random time, just random everything. And then he said something that landed like a stone in that interrogation room. The second I pulled her into the car, he told them, I already knew what was going to happen. At the house, he told investigators he brought her inside and turned on cartoons. He told her everything was going to be okay, that she would be going home to her mom very soon. Jessica, 10 years old, terrified, and completely alone, kept asking him who he was. Whether he knew her mom, he answered her. He looked her in the eye and lied to her face over and over while she sat on that couch watching television. She had an accident out of fear. He made her change clothes and gave her one of his own shirts to wear. He cut her hair. And then, at some point during those hours inside that house, Jessica Ridgeway lost her life. She never made it back to her mom. She never made it back to school. She was gone before the search for her had even truly begun. And the person sitting across from investigators in that room described it all with the same flat, measured tone he had used to describe everything else, as though the emotional reality of what he was saying simply did not connect to anything inside him. Austin also told investigators where the remainder of Jessica's physical remains could be found, in a concealed space beneath the house. That is exactly where they were recovered. Authorities additionally found biological evidence within the home's plumbing system, confirming that Austin had taken deliberate steps to eliminate traces of what had occurred, steps that reflected not panic but careful and advanced planning. When his Jeep was towed and processed by the forensic team, investigators found physical evidence inside the vehicle entirely consistent with everything Austin had described. Every piece of the account he had given locked into what the evidence showed. The picture was complete. And then came the revelation that shook the investigation from the inside. When detectives went back through their own records, they uncovered something that was almost impossible to process. Austin's original DNA sample, the one he had calmly and willingly provided during that first round of questioning, had been lost somewhere in the system, and never tested. The empty envelope that had cleared him was not a result. It was an administrative failure that had slipped through quietly and gone completely unnoticed. A second analysis was ordered without delay. The result came back fast, and without any ambiguity whatsoever. Austin Sigg's DNA matched evidence recovered from both the jogger incident and Jessica's case. There was no question left. There was no other explanation. The investigation had its answer. Now came the reckoning. To understand what happened to Jessica Ridgeway, you have to be willing to do something deeply uncomfortable. You have to try to understand the person who took her, not to excuse anything. Not to explain it away or soften its edges, but because the warning signs were there. Scattered across years, visible to multiple people in multiple contexts. And they went unanswered long enough for the worst possible outcome to unfold on an ordinary Friday morning in a quiet American suburb. Austin Sigg was 17 years old when he took Jessica's life, but by the time investigators sat across from him in that interrogation room, they were not looking at someone who had made a single catastrophic decision in a single dark moment. They were looking at someone who had been quietly unraveling for years, slowly, deliberately, and almost entirely out of sight. His parents had separated some years earlier, but by most accounts both Robert and Mindy remained involved in his life, and genuinely tried to support their son. In 2008, growing concerned about his behavior and the direction things were heading, they took him to a faith-based counselor. Austin would later say it did not help, not even close. Whatever had already taken hold of him by that point did not loosen its grip. It tightened. He described feeling like things were under control for perhaps a month after those sessions ended, and then sliding right back to where he had been. Except worse than before. By 2009, the concern had escalated to the point where his doctors contacted his father directly and strongly urged him to monitor and significantly restrict Austin's access to television and computers.
All right, well, police in suburban Denver are still removing evidence from the home of a teenage college student in custody for the kidnapping and murder of 10-year-old Jessica Ridgeway.
That recommendation was made when Austin was 14 years old. He would later tell investigators that his exposure to deeply disturbing illegal online content had begun when he was just 12. What he consumed over those years was not static. It was escalating. Increasingly dark increasingly violent material that he said he felt completely unable to stop seeking out. He described the pull of it as something that grew heavier and more consuming over time until it had taken over his thinking almost entirely. Alongside that, a fixation on death had been quietly growing for years, and the people around him had noticed. A former classmate who had known Austin since middle school described him as clearly intelligent but profoundly withdrawn, someone who talked to himself in the hallways, who struggled with even basic social interaction, and who carried in an energy that was genuinely difficult to name but impossible to ignore once you were around him. He had been bullied, partly over his voice, and eventually stepped away from traditional schooling altogether, earning his equivalency certificate independently. He later enrolled at a local college and began taking courses in mortuary science. He wanted to work professionally with the deceased. In the context of everything investigators would come to learn about him, that detail is a difficult one to sit with. A psychologist who reviewed the full case files was direct in her assessment. Despite the complicated elements of Austin's background, his parents' separation, his father Robert's documented history involving serious legal troubles,
courtroom sketches of Austin Sigg, the teenager pleading not guilty to killing 10-year-old Jessica Ridgeway, even though he admitted it.
Well, this could very well be a placeholder plea. Even though Austin Sigg pled not guilty on all counts, he has the option to modify that later, including guilty and not guilty by reason of insanity.
There was no evidence that Austin himself had experienced abuse as a child. His home life, while imperfect, had been relatively stable. He had family support. He had access to professional help at a meaningful age. And yet none of it had been enough to redirect what was building inside him. Her conclusion was unambiguous. This was not someone who had acted on sudden impulse and been consumed by remorse afterward. There was no compassion shown toward Jessica, not during and not after. This was calculated behavior carried out by someone who had spent years mentally arriving at that moment, step by careful step. The evidence prosecutors assembled confirmed exactly that portrait. Austin had researched how to create the substance used in the jogger attack. He had searched online for locations where individuals were most vulnerable to being approached. He had studied forensic investigative methods specifically to understand how law enforcement works, and how to stay a step ahead of it. He told investigators himself that the people who successfully carry out multiple offenses are the ones who understand how to eliminate evidence. He was 17 years old when he sat there and said that. One neighbor named Emily shared something that has stayed with many people, who followed this case closely from the beginning. When news first broke about Jessica's disappearance, Emily's 11-year-old daughter came straight to her and told her she knew exactly who was responsible.
I feel bad that I dismissed it.
When Emily Alexander's 11-year-old daughter said she knew who kidnapped Jessica, no one believed her.
She goes, "Mom, oh my God, I know who did it." And I go, "Who?" And she goes, "The goth teenager from the park."
At this park just down the road, she says a teenage boy had been acting strangely, staring at her daughter, walking by their home.
And she pointed him out right across the street from our house.
Emily Alexander says her daughter's friends may have been what saved her.
If she had been at the park alone, there's no telling, what could have happened. I should have let her know that the moment she feels uncomfortable, that she should trust that, and that, it's better to be safe than...
Emily admitted she brushed it off in the moment, the way most adults would when a child makes a claim that dramatic in the middle of a neighborhood in crisis. But her daughter was insistent. She described a teenage boy who had been acting strangely near the park down the road, staring at her and her friends as they walked past his home. When Austin was arrested shortly after, that conversation came rushing back to Emily with full force. Even a child had seen something the adults around him had chosen not to look at directly, and that is perhaps one of the most haunting dimensions of this entire case. Not just what Austin did, but how visible the edges of it were. To neighbors, to classmates, to an 11-year-old girl on a sidewalk, and how the path from those early scattered warnings to that October morning went completely uninterrupted for years. On October 30th, 2012, Austin Sigg was charged as an adult. The list of counts was long and covered the full scope of what investigators had uncovered. Everything tied to what he had done to Jessica. The material recovered from his devices, and the charges connected to the earlier attack on the jogger near Kettner Lake. 19 counts in total. The weight of that list left very little room for interpretation about what kind of case prosecutors believed they were dealing with and exactly how seriously they intended to pursue it. Austin entered a plea of not guilty to every single charge, given his detailed voluntary confession. given that physical evidence had been recovered from inside his own home, given what forensic teams had found in his vehicle and throughout the property. That police stunned a lot of people who had been following the case closely. The thought of a full trial, of having every last detail aired publicly in a courtroom, of Jessica's family having to sit through all of it, felt almost unbearable to those who had invested weeks of their lives in this story and in this little girl's memory. His defense team went to work building their case. They argued that Austin's actions had been impulsive rather than premeditated, and that Austin himself was still working to understand what had driven him to that point. They pointed to complications during his mother's pregnancy, difficulties at the time of his birth, and 3 surgeries he had undergone in early childhood. They cited his father Robert's extensive and well-documented history of serious legal troubles, constructing a portrait of a young man shaped by circumstances that had been largely beyond his control from the very beginning. Prosecutors were not moved. The evidence did not bend to fit that narrative, and they were not inclined to help it along. Then on October 1st, 2013, almost exactly 1 year after Jessica left for school, and just 2 days before the trial was scheduled to begin, Austin Sigg stood up in court and changed his plea. Against the direct advice of his own legal team, he pleaded guilty to 15 of the charges against him, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, attempted kidnapping, and the offenses connected to his attack on the jogger.
Founding fathers of this country did not set forth an amendment that says when a young man kidnaps, robs, sexually assaults, and murders and dismembers a 10-year-old girl, that everything other than the murder should be excused.
What we do know is that this young man is dangerous. The only way to protect the community from him is to keep him confined forever. They have never seen an offense like this committed by someone under 18, ever. Not in this county, not in this state, not in this.
For many people who had followed every development in this case from the very beginning, that moment felt like a long, overdue acknowledgement of what the evidence had already made undeniably clear to everyone else. Sentencing was set for November 19, 2013, in a Jefferson County courtroom before Judge Stephen Mooninger. What happened in that courtroom that morning was not quiet. Judge Mooninger did not treat it as a procedural formality. He addressed the case directly, and he addressed Austin directly, with the kind of language that reflects a court that has looked at the full record and reached a firm and settled conclusion. He noted that in his experience, and in the experience of others in that system, they had never seen an offense of this nature committed by someone under the age of 18, not in that county, not in that state, not anywhere in the country that they were aware of. He was unambiguous about what the only appropriate outcome looked like. District Attorney Peter Weir was equally clear when he addressed the press. There had been no plea arrangement, he said, no concessions, no leniency of any kind offered or given at any stage of the process. What Austin Sigg received in that courtroom was the full weight of what the law allowed, applied without reduction. The sentence handed down was 40 years for the murder of Jessica Ridgeway, with an additional 86 years stacked on top for the remaining charges. Because Austin had been 17 at the time the offenses were committed, certain sentencing provisions technically existed under guidelines applicable to juvenile offenders. But those additional 86 years rendered that distinction entirely beside the point. Austin Sigg will spend every remaining day of his life behind bars.
So, I'm actually not going to say anything today, because I don't think that the defendant has the right to hear how he affected me, my family, or who Jessica was. Once we walk out of this courtroom, we'll not remember his name, and we'll all only remember Jessica and the legacy she created, as well as the Lassie Project in which she inspired. Thank you. Thank you.
He was later transferred to a facility out of state for his own safety and security. Austin stood at sentencing and said nothing. No statement. No acknowledgement of the family seated in that same room. No expression of any kind crossed his face as the sentence was read aloud. He simply stood there, and then it was over. Jessica's mother, Sarah, chose not to address Austin directly either, but for a reason that was entirely her own, and one that moved the courtroom in a way that very few moments in a sentencing hearing ever do. She stood and said that she was not going to give him the opportunity to hear how he had affected her family, or who Jessica was as a person. She said that once they walked out of that courtroom, they would not remember his name. They would remember Jessica. They would remember her legacy, and the lives she had inspired, and the light she had carried, And then Sarah Ridgeway walked out of that courtroom and did not look back. When a case like this ends in a courtroom, there is a tendency to exhale, to treat the gavel coming down as a kind of finish line. But for the people who actually lived inside this story, who carried it not as a headline, but as a reality they woke up to every single morning, the sentencing was not an ending. It was simply the moment that the rest of their lives formally began. And the rest of their lives looked nothing like the ones they had planned. Jessica's mother, Sarah, described the experience of losing her daughter the way only someone carrying that particular weight every single day could. She said it was like a plate shattering with one piece gone forever. You can try to glue it back together, she said. You can work at it every day, but the cracks never go away, and it will never be whole again no matter how hard you try. That is not defeat. That is just the honest truth of what grief like this actually looks like from the inside, spoken by someone who refused to dress it up for anyone else's comfort. Mindy Sigg, the mother who made that 18-minute call to 911 and turned her own son into law enforcement, said she never once regretted that decision. Not for a single moment, not on the hardest days, not ever. She threw herself fully into therapy in the years that followed and worked steadily and deliberately to rebuild her life from the ground up. She still thinks about Austin. She still mourns the child she raised, the baby she remembered as bright and curious and full of promise. But she has not spoken to him since the day he was arrested. He has never reached out to her either. She said she could not allow him to lie to her again, and that she had never received an answer to the one question she needed answered most. Why? That question, she indicated, remains unanswered to this day. When asked what she would say to Jessica's family if given the chance, Mindy did not hesitate for a moment. She said she would give her life to change what happened, that she would trade places with Jessica without a second thought if it were somehow possible. Jessica's grandmother heard those words and responded with something that moved an entire courtroom when it was shared publicly. We understand that she lost her son too, she said. It is a different kind of loss, but she still lost him. My heart goes out to her. If we had been allowed to walk over and hug her in that courtroom, we probably would have. That kind of grace, extended across that particular divide, is not something you encounter often. It says something profound about the family Jessica came from, and the values they carried even through the worst chapter of their lives. 5 years after losing her daughter, Sarah gave birth to a little girl named Anna Christine Pendel Ridgeway.
The reminders of her are everywhere.
Lots of purple.
Her sweet 10-year-old smile.
Her pictures everywhere.
Her favorite color.
We all still wear purple. Purple's everywhere in our house.
I think she makes her presence known.
That's how Sarah Pendel Ridgeway and her family remember Jessica.
We still talk about her. She still exists for us.
Yes, it's hard, and it's the hardest thing that anybody could possibly do is to move forward. I need to remember who she was and who I would have hoped she would have become, and know that I need to keep moving forward. She was born October 15th. Anna Christine Pendel Ridgeway. Her and her sister share the same middle name, and then
her eyes are blue, different blue than Jessica's, but they're blue.
She loves her hands. They're her favorite thing in the whole wide world.
I think Jessica would be enamored.
She's very much ever present. We talk to Jessica, and I think she kind of turns her head. It looks like she's talking to somebody over in the distance, so I think her sister definitely comes and visits and weaves her little sparkly way around. And
Mom and Grandma say they'll tell Anna all about Jessica's sparkle as soon as she's old enough.
I'm mostly going to say that, she has a big sister that left before she was born.
They want to raise her without fear.
I'm going to try not to let what happened overshadow how I raise Anna, because I don't want her to be smothered a little bit. I want her to be able to have her own little life.
She's not replaced. She's just expanded.
No, she definitely has an extra special angel watching over her.
She and her older sister shared the same middle name. Sarah has spoken openly about what it means to raise Anna inside a family that still talks about Jessica every single day, still wears purple around the house, still feels her presence in the small and unexpected moments that grief tends to carve out for itself. She said she intends to tell Anna about her big sister as soon as she is old enough to understand, that she has a sister who left before she was born, that she has always had someone watching over her. Sarah also said she is determined not to let what happened overshadow the way she raises Anna. She wants her daughter to have her own life, her own freedom, her own sense of the world, as a place worth moving through without fear. She was not replaced, Sarah said simply. She was just expanded. Back in Westminster, the community that had wrapped its trees in purple ribbons and flooded Chelsea Park with light on that first terrible night never stopped finding ways to honor Jessica's memory. A memorial playground was built in her name, a custom installation with knock-knock jokes engraved by her classmates, swings wrapped in ribbons, and everything, as it had to be, in purple.
That is speckled throughout the park to this dragonfly teeter-totter, which we're told represents a school project she was particularly fond of that she was working on at the time of her disappearance.
The space exists not as a monument to what was lost, but as a living, breathing place where kids still run and laugh and do exactly what Jessica would have been doing if she had made it to school that morning. The Lassie Project, directly inspired by her case, provides a free community alert service that helps parents notify their entire local network within seconds the moment a child goes missing. The gap it was built to fill, that terrifying window of time between a child disappearing and the wider community knowing about it, is the exact gap that defined the earliest hours of Jessica's case. Her story quite literally changed the way communities respond when a child does not come home. And the Jessica Ridgeway cheer camp exists because of a promise she once made to her mom, that she would be a cheerleader who was kind to everyone, no matter what. No exceptions. No one left out. That was Jessica. Right down to the very last detail of who she was. She was 10 years old. She was walking to school on a Friday morning in October. She had eaten a granola bar for breakfast and tucked half an orange into her bag for later. She had her whole life stretched out ahead of her, full of dance routines she had not choreographed yet, and songs she had not made up yet, and animals she had not met yet, and friends she had not made yet. And in a single moment, on an ordinary street in a quiet Colorado suburb, all of it was taken from her. Some stories stay with you not because of the darkness they carry, but because of the light that refuses to go out inside them. Jessica Ridgeway was that light, and the people who loved her. Her mother, her grandmother, her aunt, her classmates, the thousands of strangers who wrapped purple ribbons around mailboxes and showed up before sunrise to search fields they had never walked before, have made absolutely certain that the world does not forget it. If this true crime documentary moved you, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this story. It genuinely helps this channel keep covering the cases that matter. Drop a comment below and let us know where you are watching from. We read every single one. And if you are not subscribed yet, do it right now. We will see you in the next one.